seh ich die Zins, die Licht verschabbes. Ich schien mir in Erleich durch dein Gesicht. Heilig jedes Wort, göttlich wer du sollt, Menschen, die dir lieb. As I watch you light the Shabbos candle, there's a mystic glow upon your face, while you're standing there, whispering a prayer. None can take your praise. Mamele, Mamele, mit Liebschaft will ich rufen dich, Mamele. Ruhig mich, schwach dein Haar, a golden Herz hast du, was jedes Kind versteht. Ich gedenk, wie die pflegst mich beruhigen, a Kind von 3 Uhr bloß, ich darf dich sehen. Wie die pflegst mich setzen, damals auf dein Schuss, mit a Kisch, abgewischt jede Tür. Weiß dein Kopf, wie Schnee, wie's fällt. Gott, es tut bang, dass du bist treu und alt. Mamele, Mamele, sei gebencht von den Gott. Understand. I remember how you used to comfort me, a little boy of 3 in bygone years. I remember how you took me on your knee. With a kiss you dry all my tears. Silver hair, by day I hate to see you growing old. Mamele, Mamele, sei gebencht von ihr Gott. Pain and all its parts, who restores all broken hearts, forms darkness and light, creator of peace and strife, who sits on the judgment throne, who forgives, acquits, and dons the long robe of mercy. heal my broken heart when I fall apart and I'm longing like an ocean with no shore. Won't you just tell me who now will embrace me and promise that I will not break down anymore? Who is, was, and will remain? Who gives life and obliterates? Opens up all hands, wings to fly and feet to land. And who will heal my broken heart when I fall apart and I'm longing like an ocean with no shore? Won't you just tell me who now will embrace me and promise that I will not break down anymore? Oh, that I will not break down anymore. When I fall apart and I'm longing like an ocean with no shore, won't you just tell me who now will embrace me and promise that I will not break down anymore? Oh, that I will not break down anymore.
Sometimes in our lives we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can feel those of your needs that you won't let show. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on me. need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Call me, call me. If you need a friend, call me, call me.
Kasche fragen, sagt mir, wer es kennt. Mit welche Teiere vermegen, bench Gott alle Men. Kauft das nicht für keine Geld, das geht men nur siehst. Und doch als men verliert das oi, wie Tränen men vergisst. A zweiten gibt man keinem nicht, es hilft nicht kein Gewinn. Oh, wer ist tot verloren? Schon was ich mein. A jüdische Mame, es gibt nicht besser auf der Welt. A jüdische Mame, oi weh wie bitter, wenn sie fällt. Wie schön und licht die Giesener's, wenn die Mame ist da. Wie treurig finster Wind wird Gott, nehmt mir auf FILM.A. In Wasser, in Feuer, was sie gelaufen vor ihr Kind, nicht halten in Teier, das ist gewiss die größte sind. Oi, wie glücklich und reich ist der Mensch, was hat, als a schöne Matone geschenkt von Gott, nur an altitschke jüdische Mame.
I should be thankful for, I've had my goodly share. And as I sit here in the comfort of my cozy chair, my fancy takes me to a humble east side tenement, 3 flights up in the rear to where my childhood days were spent. It wasn't much like paradise, but mid the dirt and all, there sat the sweetest angel, one that I fondly call my Yiddish mama. I need her more than ever now, my Yiddish mama. I long to kiss that wrinkled brow, I long to hold her hand once more as in days gone by, and ask her to forgive me for the things I did that made her cry. How few were her pleasures, she never cared for fashion style. Her jewels and treasures, she found found them in her baby smile. Oh, I know that I owe what I am today to that dear little lady so old and gray, to that wonderful Yiddish mama. Mama, mama.
If I were a rich man, yeah, don't they, don't they, don't they, don't they, don't they, don't they, all day long, bitty bitty bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. Yeah, do they, do they, do they, do way, way, oh, if I were a bitty, bitty rich, yeah, do they, do they, do they, do them. I'll build a big tall house with rooms by the dozen, right in the middle of the town. Fire tin roof with real wooden floors below. There'll be one long staircase just going up, one longer coming down. Won't lead you nowhere, just for sure.
Hello, this is Jeffery Giesener, founder of the Jewish Culture and Holocaust, October 7th Remembrance, and Stand Against Hate International Communities. I welcome you to this month's film Zoom entitled, Our Fiddlers Are on Our Roof with Special Guests, Willie Handler, author and storyteller, Out from the Shadows, Mark Newhouse, author and storyteller, The Devil's Bookkeeper, Trilogy, Keith Newhouse, author of My TIO'S Pulse. Enjoy the film, and there will be a live Q&A at the end of the film. Please stay and share in the live discussions with today's talented artists. I will also join the live Q&A.
Was dark and all was sad, and all my strength almost spent. Every day like the next, every breath might be the last. A time so bleak, the body weak, despair is rising everywhere, the pain too deep, too numb to weep, couldn't bear it anymore. Saw a rainbow in the night, heard a voice cry, just go on. Felt a hand wipe my tear, a gleam of light. shadows loom, they overtake from the gloom and escape. You breathe the fear, dream of life beyond this deep and dark abyss. You just exist, an endless night, ever yearning for the dawn. Sun, a bird flies by, a soothing breeze beneath blue skies, a fleeting moment you forget, and you transcend the tragic life. See the rainbow in the night, raise your eyes, behold the night, embraced us in our darkest hour, we survive. Oh, the rainbow in the night gave the courage to run. Let us take me back to life, we
Indifference is not an option, just as racism is not, just as evil is not. But that is true also of education. The opposite of knowledge is not ignorance, but indifference. The opposite of beauty is not ugliness, but indifference. The opposite of life is not death, but indifference to life and death.
What is it even coming back now? Difficult?
Each time I come, I try not to speak for a day or two or three, and just to go back and find the silence that was in me then. And I say to myself, how many of us did not live and simply vanished? Look at this place, the immensity of the place. It's a universe. And when you think of the numbers, 1 million, 1.5 million people, just think country or a city that has 1.5 million inhabitants and simply vanishes. And so I think of that. I come here and try to see the invisible and try to hear the inaudible. And I always see what I had seen the last time I was here.
The story of Tuvia Arieli, the taxi driver. This week, as usual, I was driving through the streets of Tel Aviv looking for passengers. Suddenly, a man waved me down. He looked quite eccentric, an elderly gentleman wearing a buttoned-up Miami shirt, a gold watch, and bracelets. He got into the taxi and said, "Take me to Schenken Street." We started driving and began chatting. He told me about his life, his businesses, investments, and his many successes. After a few minutes, he asked if he could smoke in the cab. I said, "Sure, go ahead." Then he pulled out a cigar. And let me tell you, I know cigars. That one was worth at least $500. As I reached for my cheap Next Light lighter, he said, No, I'll light it for you." He pulled out a Zippo lighter worth another $1,000. As he leaned forward to light my cigarette, his sleeve rolled back, and there it was, a tattooed number on his arm, the kind of number burned into the flesh of Jews taken to the Nazi death camps. In a split second, I photographed that number in my mind. I was overcome with emotion. Almost instinctively, my foot pressed the brake and I pulled over. Turning to him, I asked with a shaky voice, "Are you a Holocaust survivor?" He looked at me, irritated and confused. "What, you've never seen a Holocaust survivor before? Just drive, you're wasting my time." Still shaken, I asked him to share his story. He wasn't used to people, let alone taxi drivers taking such interest in his past. After hesitating, he opened up. He told me his entire family was murdered in the Holocaust. After the war, he searched tirelessly to see if anyone from his family had survived. Rumors led him to believe that his brother had made it to Israel. He arrived here, but all he ever heard was that his brother had died. Since then, he'd lived alone, in this world, all alone. When I later shared this story at a gathering of taxi drivers, I paused at this part and took a deep breath. The room was silent. My friends, fully immersed in the story, urged me to continue, but before I did, I said, before I tell you what happened next, I need to share my own story. You all know me as a religious man, but I didn't grow up this way. I was born in a completely secular kibbutz. I had no connection to religion. One rainy day, as a teenager, I sat in the kibbutz dining hall with no appetite, feeling nauseous. I decided to skip the meal and finish my shift early. My job involved a giant steel vat where we would dump potatoes to be chopped. At the bottom were massive spinning blades, like a blender. I climbed the vat to dump in the potatoes, slipped on the wet edge, and fell inside. The machine was running. I was being pulled slowly, helplessly downward and toward the blades. I screamed. I tried climbing out, but the inner wall was too high and slippery. No one heard me. Everyone was still at lunch. And then for the first time in my life, I called out to God, "Please help me. Don't let me die. Save me." Suddenly, out of nowhere, a hand reached in, grabbed me, and pulled me out. Tattooed on that arm was a number. It was Zalman, a Holocaust survivor from our kibbutz. He was silent, broken, and never spoke to anyone because of his trauma. But that day, he saved my life. From that moment on, Zalman's number stayed with me. I remembered every digit. When I joined the army, the first 3 digits of my military ID matched the first 3 on his arm. When I bought my first apartment, the middle digits of the address matched the next 3. Later, my phone number ended with the exact same 3 digits. Zalman's number haunted me, guided me. So, back to that day with the eccentric man in the back seat. As he lit my cigarette, I saw his tattooed number, and it was almost identical to Zalman's. Just 1 digit was different. At that moment, something clicked. I slammed the brakes, locked the doors, and without explaining, made a U-turn and began speeding in the opposite direction. The man panicked. "Where are you going? What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I just drove faster. I wasn't sure why. I just knew I was doing the right thing. I was headed to my old kibbutz. I had to find Zalman. I didn't even know if he was still alive. So many years had passed. When we got there, I ran straight to his old apartment. I knocked hard, not even sure he still lived there. The door opened. Zalman, alive, standing there with that same distant look. I grabbed him in a hug, overcome with emotion. He didn't react, didn't remember me, still distant, silent. Then the man from my cab walked up behind me, saw Zalman, and suddenly wrapped his arms around him in a trembling embrace. Zalman and the passenger were brothers, long lost, disconnected by war, by time, by silence, but now reunited. And for the first time in my life, I saw Zalman speak. And in that moment, I realized Zalman was sent from heaven to save my life so that one day I could return the favor and give him his brother back. This was no coincidence. This was divine.
It was a very tense household. My father had a lot of issues with anger. It was a difficult upbringing.
Willie Handler's parents, Ella and Shifra Handler, also survived the Nazis. Most of their family didn't. Their world here, he says, was small, lonely, yet crowded by the war.
My parents didn't have much of a social circle, so even they didn't see very many people. To some extent, it was like maybe the war never really ended, and that they were just still struggling to survive.
Handler started to write his family story only to find more haunted spaces. His father had lost his first family in the war, but had never mentioned his youngest daughter.
Do you think he buried the fact that he had another child because it was too hard?
Definitely. My father, for 1 month in Gross Rosen concentration camp, was a Sonderkommando. And he was putting bodies into crematorium. And that include babies. You know, even for a few weeks, that would traumatize you. It is history now, but they live inside of me. And so I'm still here. My parents' experience, their trauma has been passed on to me.
Handler says he used to struggle with his own anger and grew up finding safety in the shadows.
I actually worked in the Ontario Public Service. One of my weaknesses was I didn't like to take a lot of credit for things. And I'm positive that it's passed down from my dad, who in the camps, one of the things that you didn't want to do was draw attention to yourself. You wanted to just blend in the masses. Being selected out was usually had negative implications. Hey! Hey, big guy!
Handler says he can't rewrite history, but he's grateful for a hand in the present.
You. One of the things that bothered me my whole life was not having any grandparents. Definitely with my grandkids. I cherish every moment with them, and I want them to have the full experience of having grandparents so they have memories that I didn't have. It's like monkeys.
Hello, today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with Willie Handler, author of Out from the Shadows, Growing Up with Holocaust Survivor Parents. Welcome, Willie.
Thank you for having me.
I am really happy to have you. Before we really get into your book and your writing, why don't you give everyone a quick, what are they going to find when they open up these pages?
My life story, more or less, but actually it's more than that. This is not like, I think, an ordinary memoir. Sometimes I refer to it as an investigative memoir. So the beginning of the book really gives the history of my family, which I actually did not know, and I had to spend 2 years researching. My parents are no longer around, and they didn't say much.
Right.
And then it gets into my childhood, and then I talk about things like trauma, and which is very common in families of Holocaust survivors.
Right.
And then the sort of the end piece is a little bit of background about anti-Semitism.
Fantastic. What made you decide to do this? Your parents were gone. They had never really talked too much about being Holocaust survivors. What made you decide that you were going to kind of like open that all up for inspection?
I never wanted to write this book, and that's what I tell everybody. This was not my idea. I was against it. My wife kept telling me, you should write your parents' story. You know, people would find it interesting. And I said, this world doesn't need another Holocaust book.
Right.
And then, I started thinking about it and going, well, I don't know that much. I don't know much about my family's history. Right. I swear to God, I didn't even know the names of some of my aunts and uncles. They had perished in the war, and their names were never mentioned. Right. So my own curiosity, I started to dig up stuff. I remember when I first put pen to paper, though really I wasn't using pen or paper, so to speak. I wrote an 1,800-word blog post. That was all I knew. That was it. And a lot of it was wrong, as I found out. And so I became curious, and I wanted to find out what were their stories and who were my ancestors. And then I realized nobody in the family knows either. And that's when I decided I'm going to write the book after all. And I wrote this book for my grandkids.
Yeah.
that they would know and they would be able to tell their kids one day. And lo and behold, I found out, well, there's a lot of people out there who want to hear this story as well. And
how did you go about collecting all of this family history?
And so I researched archives, found all kinds of stuff, read some, I read some historical books, some scientific papers, research papers. Like, there was a lot of stuff out there, as it turns out, and a lot of it related to family. I actually found somebody who'd written a little piece about my mother's father, the stuff I didn't know about.
Right.
And it's just all started, and then I had to put it all together. I went to Poland 2 years ago and visited my my father's birthplace and where he lived, and I visited Auschwitz, and that was a kind of a heavy moment as well. So it was just, there was a lot of information out there.
I'm sure, and there's probably way more information that you found than you were possibly able to put into the book. Is that?
Yeah, and I remember my mother was, after Steven Spielberg released Schindler's List, he used his share of the film to create a foundation to interview Holocaust survivors. Many thousands, tens of thousands were interviewed, and it's that foundation is now housed at USC. And my mother was interviewed in 1995. I never even looked at the recording. So a couple of years, 2 years ago, I reached out to the foundation, got a copy of her interview. There was a lot of stuff in there I did not even know. And it's kind of, there was a period, for a period of my life, I didn't want to know anything about it. And then, and I've spoken to a lot of other children of Holocaust survivors, and same kind of thing happened is then later in your life, when your parents are no longer around, you have all these questions as well. Right. And one of the things, there's two reasons why survivors do not talk about their experience. One is to shield their children from harmful information.
Right.
In some cases, they will tell you very, very general things that happened, but nothing too specific or graphic. But for many, they were protecting themselves more than anything else, is that they bury those bad memories and all that trauma and don't want to be reminded. So in my father's case, he's a classic example. If I started asking him questions, he would get very emotional and at some point would start to cry. And most children of Holocaust survivors understand that their parents went through great hardship and had a lot of pain and grief and bad memories, and don't want to create more pain for them. So that's why they don't ask the questions.
Yeah.
And as I also talk to these children and grandchildren of survivors and find out about their parents and their grandparents' experience, the source of the trauma is like all over the place too, because they weren't all in concentration camps. But they experienced some form of trauma during the war. One of the things my father did repeatedly say, that he had lost a wife and child during the war. So in 1940, when he was actually in the ghetto, he got married and had a child. And her name was Leah. And this was repeated over and over again. And and all I knew is that she was 4 years old, his daughter. So one of the things that I wanted to uncover was 4 years old when? Like, when was she born? And I didn't know when he was married.
Right.
I just knew her first name. So I started digging up in database, and I got a listing of birth and marriage. Actually, I step back a bit. The first thing that seemed unusual is in one of the archives of Nazi documents, I found a registration card in one of the camps that he was in, and it listed his wife's name. So that's when I found out, excuse me, her last name.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had 2 daughters, 2 and 4. And two children, if I recall. And I'm going, what? That can't be right. And I'm going, no, I just thought that was an error. So going forward, I wanted to find out when he was married and when his daughter was born. And the records come back, and I found, and it gave the date of their marriage, and it listed 2 kids, 2 daughters. I'm going, what? And it just kind of hit me. I'm going, what? How could that be? And I told my siblings, and I told the family, and everybody was like in shock, absolutely in shock. And so that's kind of what sent me scrambling to Poland. And so I needed to find out how could this possibly be? How did he forget about that? Was he not around at the time? Had he been already deported to the camps when she was born? And who knows? There was no way of knowing. And so when I went to Poland in 2022, I went to the town hall, and they retrieved the documents, and they had registration books, and they handwrite all the births, deaths, and marriages in a registration. And they showed me the 2 birth registrations, and they were in German. And so I took photos of them to get translated, and I see at the bottom my father had signed the documents. So he knew he had 2 children, and going, and my conclusion was that the trauma that he experienced, he pushed the memory of that younger child out of his head.
Think about it.
I'm not even sure he knew when they died.
Yeah, probably not.
Because he was not around.
Right.
When they were deported to Auschwitz.
Yeah, that would have been a very difficult thing to find. So let's talk a little bit. You were bringing up this idea of generational trauma. Right. And let's talk a little bit, like, what is that? And then how did it affect you? How has it affected your kids, your grandkids? Like, at what point does generational trauma no longer have a ripple in the following generations?
Well, one thing that nobody really knows, I think, that's my view. So trauma gets stored. I'm not a clinician, but I understand that trauma gets stored in the body. And somehow it gets stored in your genes and actually can alter the genes. And once it gets stored in your genes, obviously it can get passed down to your children. And that's how it gets passed down. And it will get passed down each generation. Until you, and this part I'm not totally clear, but I think if you, there are ways to sort of stop the transmission, or at least modify it, which is to do exactly what I've done, which is to openly talk about it, share the experience, let your children know about what happened. Get them to be open about their own experiences rather than holding it in, because holding it in means you're going to store it in your body and somehow it's going to get transmitted down. So that's really how it works. Now, interesting observation that I found that when I was talking to a lot of children survivors was they didn't have great childhoods. So what you actually have is a combination of things working. And then I think in most people that's the case. Most people have been exposed to some type of trauma.
Right.
And so how you deal with it, that really determines your kind of future. So many of them, they had this generational trauma that was passed on to them, but they also might have experienced childhood trauma. They might have been victims of sexual abuse. And so there's many layers of trauma.
Right.
And that's where it gets very complicated.
How do you think your parents' trauma affected you as a child?
Well, I had very loving parents, but they were what I would say distant and uninvolved. They were focused on survival. Literally, you come out of the camps and you reestablish your life, but you're still in survival mode. And their focus was on making a living, providing food, shelter, clothing. That's kind of about it. And so they're uninvolved and distant, which means as a child, you're on your own a lot. You're not getting much guidance. And so no one helped me with my homework. No one helped me with problems that I had with other kids. Nobody helped me choose a school to go to, what courses I should take, took me to sports and other activities. None of that happened.
Right.
You're on your own. I joined sports teams on my own, got my own equipment, went to practices on my own. Everything was on your own. So you grow up too quickly. You become very independent, but you also are constantly in survival mode. So you're insecure, lack confidence, lack trust, because those are things that were not, you didn't have the parental guidance to guide you through sort of these difficult times. And it kind of just builds up on you. So that's directly result of their trauma. But as well, there are other aspects that manifest itself that, like I inherited my father's grief. So his grief for his family, I experienced that. And his mistrust of people, I inherited that. So and his ability to store and compartmentalize bad memories, I picked that one up as well. So those are things, so it's a combination of your childhood experiences and things that were actually directly passed on.
Passed down to you. When people read your book, what are you hoping they take away? If they took away one thing, what do you want them to really understand after reading Out of the Shadows?
The legacy of the Holocaust, or the shadow as I call it,
right,
lives on. And so and the descendants are invisible victims. They don't talk about their experience. Nobody really has a clue that these people are as damaged as their parents were. And I think that's something that I didn't even realize. So if I didn't really understand it,
right,
nobody does. The one thing I can say about anti-Semitism, it's been around thousands of years.
Right, right.
It has never gone away. It may go below the surface. It's cyclical in nature. But the basis has never changed. And so what we're experiencing right now is that all that hate that's been under the surface mostly, but not exclusively, is coming to the surface again. And I've heard many people, two observations I have. One is when I interviewed children of survivors, I asked them all, what kind of anti-Semitism were you exposed to growing up? Most of them said none. But it was there, but they didn't they didn't see it. And so this explosion of anti-Semitism that's going around now is a complete shock to them, is traumatizing them. Because it's something, to them, it's something new.
Right.
And so and so they're kind of reliving their parents' experience. One thing, I don't believe we're heading towards another Holocaust.
Good.
But we are in a period of a lot of persecution. I call this now the post-Holocaust period. October 7th, 2023 began what I would say is a post-Holocaust, where if there was any sympathy for Jews between 1945 and 2023, it disappeared. So that's one thing. And in fact, a lot of my non-Jewish friends, many of them say they don't see it because, when it comes to hate, unless it's directed
at you, you don't notice it.
Don't notice it.
Right.
And these are people who are sympathetic, but they can't.
They don't see it.
I think what people can do is educate yourself.
Okay.
Because guess what? The school system doesn't tell you what's in my book.
No, it does not.
That I've been told by many, many people. Oh, this is not how the war was described to be at school.
Right.
So that's one thing. So you need to learn about what happened. You have to really learn about the history of anti-Semitism, which is the basis is actually on conspiracy theories. Way before there was, Anon and all these, way before the internet, there were always conspiracy theories directed at Jewish people.
Right.
And so the one step is, get yourself educated, learn what really is going on. Two is speak out, support Jewish people, because right now there's a shortage of allies, and what's going on in the Middle East is a tragedy. But that is what hate will bring you to.
Right.
And there's hate on both sides.
Right.
There's no question. So, but that has nothing to do with diaspora Jews. They're not fighting. And so when you see it whether you're in London or you live in New York or wherever you live, when you see it, you have to speak out. And you have to speak out and you also have to push politicians to protect everyone's human rights, not just some of us.
Right.
what did you gain? Hang your heads in shame. Never again. Never again. Your Janice, we now turn away. What can I say? What can I say? What made you turn?
Everywhere is violence. Usini ogope. There must be a better way. Nikuambie. Can't just sit in silence and pray. Can't close our eyes and hope for a better day. Yeah. Everybody's biased. Usini ondoke. There must be another way. Nikuambie. Wanna sleep all night and dream all day. Baby's crying, mama's far away. Yeah. Leo, Leo, together we rise up. Leo, Leo, divided we fall. Why is everyone so quiet? Usini wache. You must have something to say. Nikuambie. The devil man trying to take my soul away. Higher power gonna show me the way. Leo, Leo, it's so much hotter today than yesterday. I worry about tomorrow more than yesterday. So much harder to go the other way. I worry about the sorrow this will bring one day. Leo, Leo, from the ashes we rise up. Leo, Leo, say never again. Every single one's on trial. Usini lenge. Nobody gets away, not today. Can close my eyes and make this go away. Wanna see tomorrow and still live today. Leo, Leo, I pray.
Meeting with families, President Obama and Vice President Biden placing 49 white roses, one for each victim, at a memorial site for those killed in the Orlando nightclub massacre.
Soon, each victim will be laid to rest. Loved ones already saying their final goodbyes as the funerals for the fallen begin. The victims honored amid calls to end such senseless mass shootings.
The president also urging lawmakers to, quote, end the plague of violence that these weapons inflict on so many lives.
Our team coverage begins tonight with Local 10 News reporter Michael Seiden live in Orlando with more. Michael.
The president spent most of his time with the grieving families. He also met with those wounded survivors, the same men and women who were forced to run for their lives.
A heartbreaking moment as President Obama and Vice President Biden visited this growing memorial, placing bouquets of 49 roses, one for each victim of the nightclub massacre. They then stood in silence, a sign of respect for the victims of this hateful act of violence.
So many young people in their 20s and 30s. So many students who were focused on the future.
For 2 hours Thursday, the commander-in-chief met privately with grieving parents of the victims and the survivors.
These families could be our families. In fact, they are our family. They're part of the American family.
Very emotional moment that we just passed over there. The Mr. President and the Vice President hugged the family, especially the mother.
The president also took time out to shake the hands of first responders, praising them for their heroic actions. He also made it clear that it's time to come together as a country.
And we're all going to have to work together at every level of government, across political lines, to do more to stop killers who want to terrorize us.
Before heading back to Washington, Mr. Obama making the following promise.
We will continue to be relentless against terrorist groups like ISIL and Al-Qaeda. We are going to destroy them.
And before heading back to Washington, the president did meet with the owners of Pulse nightclub, which tonight still remains an active crime.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mark Newhouse, and I'm the proud father of today's special guest, Keith Newhouse, owner of Newhouse Creative Group, featured in USA Today and The Village Voice, among other major media outlets. Keith is also the author of My TIO'S Pulse, an award-winning picture book which became a powerful community project, featuring illustrations donated by 22 artists, and with all profits donated to the victims of the Pulse tragedy and their families. Keith is using Newhouse Creative Group and NCG Author Services in his mission of inspiring the readers and writers of today and tomorrow. My TIO'S Pulse has helped countless children learn about not just the Orlando Pulse tragedy of 2016, but how to cope and feel safe with violent incidents plaguing the world today. Hi, Keith. Thanks for sharing this fascinating adventure with us and letting me turn the tables on you since you interviewed me in the past.
Thank you so much, Dad.
Can you tell me what inspired you to write My TIO'S Pulse?
Well, having lived 10 minutes away from the Pulse nightclub when the tragedy occurred, I knew that I wanted to find a way to help and to give back to the community. So after singing in a concert with over 40 performing groups to benefit the victims, I knew I still wanted to do more. At work one day, I asked my manager how she was going to tell her kids about the tragedy. She's one of the best parents I know and a former elementary teacher, so like when the Olympics came around, she always made lesson plans for her kids where they'd have Greek night, eat Greek food, talk about the Greek gods, and everything was a lesson plan with her kids. So I asked her how she was going to tell her kids about the tragedy. She told me she was stumped. And I thought if a parent as wonderful and prepared as that didn't know what to say, how would a parent without an education background have any idea? Then a few nights later, I had a dream, and the story of My TIO'S Pulse was born. It came to me in a dream. I never thought I would be the one to tell the story, though. I hadn't written anything publishable. But when I told a friend of mine in marketing about the idea, she said I just had to be the one to tell it.
Well, I'm glad you found another parent as good as us to help you out with this. But let me ask you this. You also managed to get the support of a large number of artists. How'd you manage that?
Well, when I told my marketing friend about the book, she connected me with Ethan Long, who had written and illustrated over 100 picture books, including a PBS series. He then connected me to other artist organizations within Orlando and the Central Florida area, and we were inundated with people who wanted to help. It was just amazing. From there, we had a psychotherapist who had worked with children who had lost loved ones at Pulse, as well as a number of organizations and media outlets who also got involved. By the time the book was published, we had over 40 individuals donating their time, talent, and services to make the My TIO'S Pulse project a reality. We even had a printer who donated all printings of the book at just the cost of paper, no ink charge and no labor charge.
I think it's an amazing part of the story is how you got so many people involved. You know, My TIO'S Pulse, the book, is much more than just about that one incident, though, you know, terrible as it was. How do you see it helping others, especially in these times of bullying, hate, and rising anti-Semitism?
Absolutely. Although the storyline of My TIO'S Pulse is about a child whose uncle was involved in the Pulse tragedy, the lessons of the book are so much far more widespread. The psychotherapist I worked with, Kenny Tio, described the Pulse tragedy as an unsafe person who was angry hurt people. Although it doesn't involve the words hate, bullying, or anti-Semitism, the same can be said for any kind of hate or anti-Semitism. It always comes back to an unsafe person who was angry hurt someone. He also had the same kind of widespread messaging that applied to the lessons that children, he said to give children feel safe. So if a child is affected by a tragedy, the things you should encourage a child to do are, 1, talk about their feelings, let others help when they feel sad or mad, 2, find a trusted adult, and 3, ask questions. If a child doesn't understand something, encourage them to ask questions. Using those 3 steps, any child, or even an adult, can be better prepared to cope with instances of hate, bullying, or anti-Semitism.
I totally agree with those ideas, Keith. I think they're so important. Your publishing company that you and I started was designed to help give back to the world. I'd like you to talk a little bit about how you are working to solve problems like bullying, hate, and anti-Semitism, which is so important to our audience.
Well, as you said, we started Newhouse Creative Group together as a way to give back both financially and educationally. I personally always been involved in volunteering, actually since I was a kid, and you guys got me involved in the soup kitchen, serving Thanksgiving dinner with the miracle of the mashed potatoes that wouldn't end. So this was just a way to give back in bigger ways. Besides the Pulse Project, a number of our books deal with these themes of hate, including the Bully Stoppers Club Handbook, which is available for free from our website. And we also have a growing Jewish collection, including your international award-winning Devil's Bookkeeper series about the Lodz Ghetto, the young adult My Family Secret, The Holocaust, as well as Rabbi Mark Leslie Shook's series, Search for the Sacred Scroll, which is kind of a Da Vinci Code for Judaism. We've also helped self-publish a number of books that are giving back. For example, Stacy Cook's Beyond Words teaches about communication to get past our hate and create a more compassionate world, one conversation at a time. Then there's Tamika Seaton's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Passport, which is a workbook and a roadmap to embrace diversity and champion equity.
I think you're showing that you are much more than just a publishing company. You're a caring company. So let me ask you this. What advice do you have for anyone who has thought about becoming an author?
Well, I always say everybody has a story, so share yours. Show your passion and use your story to make the world a better place. If we at Newhouse Creative Group can help you, just please let us know what we can do.
Thank you, Keith, for being my very kind and caring son and sharing your dream of positivism and hope with our friends. I want to thank Jeff for his efforts to overcome hate and anti-Semitism. Visit newhousecreativegroup.com for free materials to help writers combat hate, bullying, and anti-Semitism. You can also ask about our group discounts, author services, including a free author marketing session. Most authors hate marketing, but with Keith, you won't. And I'll say that even though he's my son. So learn about NCG Cares. If we can help you in some way, we're happy to do that. My TIO'S Pulse is available on Amazon or from newhousecreativegroup.com. Thank you, Keith, again, and thank you, everybody, for caring.
Tell me why, oh, what can we live together? Tell me why, oh, what can we live together? Everybody wants to live together, why can't we live together? No more war, no more war, no more war. Just a little peace in this world. No more war, no more war. All we want is just a little peace in this world. Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live together? together. Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live together? Let me hear you tell them.
I can hear cannons, and I can see fire in the sky to the south. The war is so near. Lodz will be taken any moment. Our neighbor insists we should leave. Run away as far as we can. Leave everything. Just get away. His wife is crying. But where can we go? Panic. Throngs leaving their homes. My mother talks Mrs. Grabinski out of her ridiculous plans to flee. Other neighbors come. More Jews seeking advice. Someone says everyone should run, so the enemy won't send us off to work camps. My father doesn't know what to do. He runs to my uncle, and then uncle back to father. They've decided. We're going to stay. We will not run. Friday, September 8th, 1939. German patrols are moving on Piotrkowska Street. Lodz is occupied. Their faces are like Martians. The conquerors. Damn them. Our local Germans greeted their countrymen. Civilians, even boys and girls, are jumping into the passing military cars with a happy Heil Hitler. Whatever was hidden in the past now shows its true face.
Building on Piotrkowska Street are ordered to leave their apartments in 15 minutes. Anyone found inside is simply shot. 100 people are killed. We run for our lives to the filthy and narrow streets of the renowned Baluti slum.
My name is Keith Newhouse. I'm the owner of NEWHOUSE Creative Group Publishing and NCG Author Services, inspiring the readers and writers of today and tomorrow. Today, I'm proud to interview my father, the multi-award-winning author of The Devil's Bookkeepers and My Family Secret, The Holocaust, as well as a former award-winning Long Island teacher. His lifelong concern about anti-Semitism and hate compelled him to create a new children's book to help parents and teachers with these vital subjects. Thank you, Dad, for being here.
Thank you, Keith, for doing this.
So, Dad, why did you decide to write a book about hate and anti-Semitism now?
Play not for fun, I can assure you of that. You know, I recently heard a presentation that revealed frightening data showing that much of the world's people, including in America, either do not know about the Holocaust or believe it is exaggerated or falsification. With all the headlines about anti-Semitism today, I found I had to do something, apply my elementary school teacher brain to try a different approach that hopefully may reach beyond the choir.
What's so unique about your approach to anti-Semitism?
Well, I believe it is difficult for many people, especially Jews, to think about anti-Semitism as a prime example of hate in general and not in isolation. What I wanted to do is create a child-friendly book with illustrations that first deals with hate in general and then sort of morphs into anti-Jewish hate as a concrete example. By couching anti-Semitism within a book that deals with hate in all its forms, I'm hoping to reach beyond the choir, those already committed to stop anti-Semitism. I want to treat it not as solely a Jewish problem, but as a beacon for all people to care about.
What do you see as the biggest issue in teaching about anti-Semitism?
That's a tough question. I think a lot of teachers and grown-ups, they do teach about prejudice and hate, even anti-Semitism. But it's mainly the people, children are people, who are part of the choir already. We need to reach out to the children and grandchildren of those who are already subscribed. But we must also, I think, reach beyond the choir. I wanted a positive approach. Who wants to read a book about something that's always negative? My question became, how do we make this a positive experience? One that attracts youngsters, teachers, and parents. That to me is the key. As a teacher, I did it all the time.
Do you think that's possible?
I not only think it's possible, but I think it's essential. Otherwise, only those who already believe that hate, prejudice, and anti-Semitism are wrong will be reached, even by our best efforts. What do we really accomplish when we reach only those already committed? My favorite story is about an old man walking on the beach where thousands of starfish are dying. He picks one up and a boy comes along and says, "Hey, what a waste of time. You can't save them all." And the old man replies, "At least I saved one." If my work saves one child from hating others...
What makes you believe that you can help when so many others have already tried?
You know I have an elementary school teacher's brain. My amazing wife still says I think like a child. For example, how do we define hate? In my book, it's simple. Hate is a terrible, strong emotion. It simply means you want to destroy something or someone. Children are shocked when they learn that hate is such an intense dislike that you want to destroy or kill whatever it is you hate.
Can you give us an example of how your elementary teacher brain explains these adult ideas to children?
Normally, I would take that as an insult, but let's take prejudice. My oldest son, when he was a baby, refused to taste ice cream because he didn't like the looks of it. Meshuggah. One day, I put a tiny bit on my finger and placed it on his lips. Well, the rest is history. In other words, once you get to know someone, taste the ice cream. You realize you were wrong to hate them. Simple examples in my book make complex, abstract ideas as digestible as ice cream.
So you try to make abstract ideas simple. But what else do you see as your goal?
Well, As a classroom teacher, I focus not on content, dumping down loads of facts into kids' brains. My focus was on empowering students to gather and weigh information and make their decisions independently. Another example of my elementary teacher brain at work. If someone tells you to hate all rocks because you may trip on a rock, should you hate, want to destroy all rocks? Imagine our lives without rocks. By taking abstract concepts and providing concrete examples such as this one, we're doing much more than just saying hate is wrong because I, your teacher or parent, say so. We're helping children deduce this for themselves. We're shifting ownership to the children, empowering them to analyze information and make responsible decisions.
What are some ways that you suggest that this could happen?
Well, I think we need to start young, in elementary school. My biggest concern is that anti-Semitism is regarded as an isolated subject, and it appears in a classroom only when discussing the Holocaust. When I was teaching sixth grade, the Holocaust appeared in the social studies textbook in 2 paragraphs near the end of the book. Sometimes teachers may not even reach it. Teaching not to hate Jews in isolation, I'm just not sure how lasting we are in effectuating a change in attitude.
You mentioned before the idea to reach beyond the choir. What do you think could be done to reach beyond the choir?
I think that's the key to this whole question. We need to approach anti-Jewish hate and the Holocaust not only as an isolated subject, or just anti-Semitism teachings may be construed as exclusively relevant to Jews, much as the Holocaust taught in isolation may be viewed as a Jewish footnote of history fading into the past. We must prevent Jews and non-Jews from thinking these lessons are relevant only to Jews. Anti-Semitism should be taught as a prime example of what hate and prejudice can unleash to any people, not just Jews. Rather than teaching it as a Jewish phenomenon, thousands of years old, it needs to be elevated as part of a curriculum that addresses it as an extreme example of hate. Yes, teach about the Holocaust, but make it relevant to all children within an anti-hate curriculum.
How would you incorporate these ideas in the real world?
In my new book, I move from the idea that hate means you want to destroy the target of your hate.
So how would you incorporate these ideas in the real world?
In my new book, I move from the idea that hate means you want to destroy the target of your hate to prejudice and hate against groups of people. All groups in America have experienced some form of hate and prejudice. And then I move finally to the oldest example, the hate of Jews, past and present. Current events are convincing proof that we must educate all children about anti-Semitism. All children and adults.
Where does the Holocaust fit in with this idea of reaching beyond the choir?
Well, I need you to understand, I'm not saying don't teach about the Holocaust, not at all. I was asked by a professor after he read my novels, what makes the Shoah more critical than, for example, what happened to blacks and indigenous people in our country? I have to be honest, I was stumped. But then I came up with the answer. It's not a question of which group suffered more, but that the Holocaust was unprecedented because, 1, it was rapidly government sponsored. 2, it was a genocide of 6 million civilians simply because they were Jewish, and it took place in approximately 7 years. It was totally illogical. The Germans diverted some of their best minds, resources, transportation, money to commit genocide while engaged in a world war. 4, it was impersonal. It was a mechanical mass extermination of unarmed people simply who did not meet a leader's standards. He called them undesirable. For all these reasons and the fact that led to a world war and still impacts so many people even today, the Holocaust is an unprecedented example. But teaching about it in isolation is not going to change anything unless we gear education to reach beyond our small choir.
That's a great idea. Any other thoughts on this?
Well, you know, Keith, I remember when your grandmother, my mom, spoke about the horrors of Auschwitz and the Lodz ghetto. I had absolutely horrible nightmares. As I researched my novels, I learned that we were not merely sheep blindly going to be slaughtered. That's a misconception. There were many stories of heroism and kindness. It is vital for all children to know that important idea. In my books and in my presentations, I don't focus on death and gas chambers, but on people who fought with courage and resourcefulness to find love and life. I don't believe education should frighten children. They should know that we had heroes and positive role models, as well as villains and haters.
How does your new book test these ideas?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because that was the whole purpose of it. My new children's book incorporates anti-Semitism within an anti-hate handbook. I use my elementary school teacher brain to make it child-friendly. It's being illustrated by a child, my talented grandson. My objective is to create a book that says you don't need to be Jewish or a believer to learn about anti-Semitism. It teaches that hating Jews, any people, is as ridiculous as hating all rocks or hating ice cream. Teaching all children not to hate, not just the choir, is vital today.
Thank you so much, Dad, for sharing your thoughts today.
You know, thank you, Keith and Jeffrey, for inviting me to share my thoughts. I hope my novels and my new book help people join the choir and say never hate again to anyone, anywhere. Taste the ice cream, folks. You may like, even love it.
Part of the problem inherent in the question is that it suggests that the future will function exactly as it has in the past, that tourism is static. It isn't. And that implies that a population and location with tens of thousands of years of history can suddenly go out of fashion. And they can't. To call La Puglia,
the Jewish cooking of southern Italy. We'll be at the Awaiting Table Cooking School with Silvestro Silvestori in Lecce, Italy. Each day we'll cook Jewish dishes from a different southern Italian region, including Rome and Lazio, Puglia, Sicily, Calabria, and Naples and Campania. During our time together, we'll shop for ingredients like locals, learn about olive oil and wine, spend time by the sea, and field trip to Jewish museums and nearby ancient towns. So come walk in the footsteps of Jews who have lived in southern Italy in the past and learn about the current Jewish communities. I'd love for you to join us.
occupation of Lithuania during World War II is a chapter in history that bears witness to the complexities and hardships faced by the Lithuanian people. In August 1939, the Nazis and the Soviets signed a non-aggression pact, also known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. They would not attack each other. Also, spheres of influence were decided, and Lithuania was to be in the Soviet sphere of influence. In July 1940, the Soviets occupied Lithuania and declared the Lithuanian Socialist Soviet Republic shortly after. The Nazis launched their attack, Operation Barbarossa, retreating NKVD units, Soviet Union Secret Service, the predecessor for the KGB, killed countless of Lithuanian political prisoners. Most notorious was the Rene massacre, where 70 to 80 Lithuanians were tortured to death by the NKVD. The Nazis conquered Lithuania in a week. The Nazis presented themselves as liberators, but they were not. The Lithuanian wish for independence was fully ignored. Lithuania became part of the Reichskommissariat Ostland. Soon after the Nazis arrived, the mass killings of the Jewish population started. The Lithuanians assisted the Nazis on a large scale. Why did the Lithuanians do that? Well, partially because of the already existing anti-Semitism in the country, but also because Jews were seen as Soviet collaborators, and the wounds off the Soviet atrocities were still very fresh. Most infamous were the public killings at the Litvikas garage in Kaunas, where a massive pogrom started as soon as the Nazis invaded Lithuania. Jewish people were publicly beaten to death with clubs. The Lithuanians slaughtered Jews. Over the years, many would die because of diseases, starvation, and summary executions. On Sunday, June 22nd, 1941, Adolf Hitler launched a surprise attack against the Soviet Union. It was the start of Operation Barbarossa, the Nazi Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union during World War II. With an enormous combat force causing unprecedented death and destruction, Operation Barbarossa is considered the largest invasion and also the bloodiest conflict in human history.
I've had the yearning to go back to Lithuania because I always felt there were two of me. The one of me that was before the war and the one of me that was after the war, and there was really a big split. While my parents were alive, I still had the connection with the past, And I had that feeling of I knew who that little girl was. When both my parents died, it became more and more important for me to go back and reconnect with my memories and to revisit some of the people who are still alive, who saved our lives, and to kind of bear witness with the people, with my family and the friends that came with us, to what happened to us, to me, to our family,